While y'all sitting there trying to figure out how to do your mocks, we're going to show you how to do that. But running back has gotten to the point where it is now valued. I think Saquon and Derrick Henry had something to do with that. We'll talk about it today on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We run it back every day here on Locked On NFL twice. That's right. I'm Tony Wiggins here in the barbershop. And speaking of running backs, that's what we're going to talk about today with my man Kevin Ostricher from Locked On Ravens. We are going to bring you the podcast that we do every single day that you can't miss if you make sure you look wherever you watch or listen. And Locked On NFL will be there right here in the barbershop every single afternoon. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200, $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Shout out to the Everydayers for joining us here every single day. Here's what we're going to go and talk about. What's the next big move for the Chargers? They snuck around and won 11 games last year and made the playoffs, and everybody's just acting like, oh, well, no, that's a pretty big deal, and they got a good coach, and I think they have a plan. We'll talk about them, and we'll talk about the Baltimore Ravens and what their draft plans seem to be. We'll do that in segment 3. Right in the middle, the 49ers need everything. When I say everything, they need everything. There's one thing in particular that you can be interested in, and that's a running back. I think they'll go and address that, even though they've said yesterday that McCaffrey is healthy. So we'll see how that goes. But that leads us to the very top, and we're going to talk about running backs. Running back value is up due to Saquon Barkley and another dude named Derrick Henry that plays in Baltimore. And with that, I bring in Locked On Ravens host Kevin Ostricher. I called him KO. KO, you guys know the value of a running game, but last year you found out the value of a running game, not just with your quarterback and running backs, but how that looks when you have an alpha running back in the building.
Yeah. And, I think that, for example, with Lamar Jackson, I think a lot of running backs can come into Baltimore's offense and be successful. And, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, two great players, in my opinion, but you can take a strength and make it an even bigger strength when you got a player like Derrick Henry. And I think with the two of them working off of one another, it's so hard to determine where you want to go as a defender, especially when the Ravens are running read options at you or trying to do some trickeration with the football. I mean, you talk about with JK and Gus, you would always kind of lean to Lamar's side because you understood, okay, yes, JK, Gus, you got to stop them. But hey, we know if 8 gets that football, man, it's going to be a whole nother experience for us trying to tackle him. So I guess it's like if you're a middle linebacker trying to read where the ball is going, you kind of are leaning Lamar's way. With Derrick Henry in the fold, Now it's like, okay, if Lamar gets the ball, it's still going to be a whole experience. But now we got to worry about Derrick Henry, and I don't know which way I want to go here. And it's a bad time for you either way because you're either going to have Derrick Henry running over you or Lamar Jackson juking you out of your shoes. So, the context of running back, you can talk about, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs getting the big deal in the offseason. You mentioned all the top running backs in the league now. It's a position that I think gets devalued or has been devalued because of the wear and tear. And, okay, they've taken so many hits and, they're doing this and that. But we just saw Saquon Barkley elevate the Eagles to a Super Bowl championship team. We saw Derrick Henry elevate an already historic Ravens offense to even more historic levels. There is something to that. And so, yes, while it's not the most premium position in the NFL, I do think that over the last couple of years, it's been a little shocking as to how devalued it's become.
I'm going to show you it by example in just a second. The difference between having a good running game and having a great player at running back. Then we'll use that to talk about the differences in the draft when you see guys talk about positional value and don't take this guy because you can get one later. You ain't going to get the one you passed up. We'll talk about that and all of that. But before we do that, I want you to let Matt Williamson explain to you a process that he has for mock drafting, which is sort of similar to mine where you go through team needs. Listen to Matt Williamson, the Peacock Williamson podcast.
Anyone is interested with Draft Digest. They put out an old school draft magazine every year. And you won't find my name in there, but that's okay. I do all the team needs, and like when you go to the team pages in that publication, I pretty much wrote all that. Like, oh, they picked up a wide receiver, but they need a tight end, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things is Miami Dolphins, draft Diddy. And it's just, what's some kind of trend about this team? And basically what I do is I go to drafthistory.com, pull up that team, and just kind of stare at it until something jumps out at me, and sometimes you got to strain a little bit. Sometimes they're jump off the page. They're really impressive stuff, and they tell you a lot about where the team is right now.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's just plain as day what a team's philosophy is, and you can learn a lot about what potentially could happen in this draft. And
that used to be really, really easy to do. But when teams started changing coaches so often, like the one in Jacksonville, I don't have any clue what the Jaguars are going to do this year because I don't know what their tendencies are. I knew what Trent Baalke's tendencies were. He's going to draft the dude with the longest arms and the traits, and he's going to stay away from players like Tyler Linderbaum, your center. He'd have never drafted him here in Jacksonville because that's just the way he thinks. All of their linemen are at least 6'5". They don't have no 6'3" linemen over there. I think they might have one in their top, 11 or 12, but that's just the way that they work. With these other teams, it's very, very hard to do. So what I try to do is look at the copycat rule. I look at the team that has the most success lately, which is the Philadelphia Eagles, and the other team that people really, really thought was right there, and that was the Baltimore Ravens. What did they do? Those two teams are known for winning, right? They didn't go we can get anybody to play running back route. They went Derrick Henry. They went Saquon Barkley. The reason why I bring this up, and we're going to get to Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers in the next segment, is because I'm going to show you something right here by stats. And this is why I say numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the whole truth, KO. Last year, Jordan Mason, who was the replacement for Christian McCaffrey had all of 202 yards last year. Jordan Mason had 153 carries for 789 yards. That's 5.2 yards a carry. 5.2. But the team still missed Christian McCaffrey. So they didn't miss production at the position, but they missed the player who draws a certain amount of attention that helps everybody else.
Miss the threat. Exactly. That is what it is. And, part of the reason why the Ravens were able to get Derrick Henry at the price point, Eagles, Saquon Barkley, is because of that devaluation. And, maybe it would have been a different conversation if the Ravens said, hey, we actually have to pay Derrick Henry $15 million per season. Do we have the cap space to do that? But instead they got him at $8 million per year, which is ridiculous for a player of Derrick Henry's caliber, who, yes, I know that age 30 is like, oh, running backs can't play after age 30. They're, don't sign him after age 30. There are cautionary tales of, yes, the 49ers paid McCaffrey all that money. Yes, he gets injured a lot. He's injury prone. We all know that. But if I'm a team, that's not scaring me away because you understand the player that McCaffrey is when he is on the field, and he does put together fully healthy seasons sometimes. But to me, what that would tell is, yes, for a Jordan Mason, you just have a high-quality backup where it's a player that could probably start on a couple of teams, but you get him on a cheaper deal to the point where you have the ability to say, hey, you know what, Christian McCaffrey, he's our guy. But if he goes down, we have someone who is now waiting in the wings. Obviously, they feel that way about Isaac Guerrero now because Jordan Mason's in Minnesota. But at the same time, there are so many good running backs in the league, all across the league. And while I think that Saquon Barkley and, I think Derrick Henry's going to get an extension that'll probably be in the same range as well. So, with those big extensions, I think we are seeing the reinflation, I guess, of the running back position, which I think is what it should have been the whole time.
Yep, Jahmyr Gibbs helps. His running mate up in Detroit helps. And then when you see teams that can't run the ball and you're like, okay, like for instance, I'll give you an example. Washington was looking for a secondary running back. They went and got an old guy last year. He fumbled in the playoffs. So you know what I'm saying? You can't keep going down that. What they do is they go for the cheaper route and they get two of them, and all they got to do is just spend the money on one guy. And I think at the top of this draft this year, you see at least two going in the first round, Omarion Hampton and, of course, Ashton Genty. Could there be more at the top of the second round? I'm going to ponder that. We're going to park right here. We're going to talk about two teams, San Francisco and Denver, a little bit further here in segment 2 as we continue here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Chewy. You probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy, whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet health care. Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from all your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food, treats, to toys, beds, and grooming. And it's not just for dogs and cats. They got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions, telehealth, vet visits, and even in-person vet clinics rolling out nationwide. I'm telling you, man, you see my tattoo right here on my arm. My dog Lexi, when she was here for those 13 years, I used Chewy so she could get every single thing that she absolutely needed, because they have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can get and save $20 off on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. Rolling along, my man KO, Kevin Ostricher. Kevin, we were talking about those 49ers. I think they need everything in the draft. I want you to hear my man Peacock and Eric Crocker from the Locked On 49ers show. We'll come back, talk about them, and then talk about Denver, who wants to be a running back by committee, but they still might take one in the first round. Check this out.
I think you kind of sold me on the 49ers taking Michael Williams. Like, just what I mean, we know that 49ers, they got to get strong up front. They need an edge rusher opposite Nick Bosa. Not a high sack volume guy, but a very productive sack guy, as opposed to the Texas A&M kid who has like 4 career sacks. I mean, Michael Williams, he's getting 4.5, 5 sacks every season that he plays.
Yeah, Michael Williams.
And we know Georgia guys, they haven't been high sack production type guys. So he's giving you production. He's getting sacks. He's a big body. He's strong. He's definitely athletic enough, and for what he is. You could sell me on that.
Yeah.
I was taking him at 11.
And I'm not saying I necessarily would make that pick. I'm just saying you shouldn't be shocked by it. And there's probably a lot of things that you should not be shocked by in the NFL draft. And it's going to be a wild one.
Yeah, it's going to be wild because the 49ers are sitting there picking at 12. Mike Shanahan or Kyle Shanahan just said yesterday, even though McCaffrey's healthy, they're going to touch the running back position. I think they need another receiver. I think that they need 2 offensive linemen. I think they need a defensive tackle to go along with an edge rusher. They might need depth at linebacker, and it might not be a bad idea for them to touch defensive back, even though they got 2 in the draft last year. The 49ers are in a real funny position where they need everything, dog.
Everything. And that's not even mentioning the whole Brock Purdy situation and what they want to do with him and whether he'll be there long term or not. So it's a weird spot because you don't really know what the direction of your franchise is going to be. What, if Purdy stays, if Purdy goes, it's a decent shift in where they are, depending on how Purdy plays this year. So, I mean, there are very talented backs in this first round. I feel like San Francisco could possibly trade back if Genty's not on the board when they pick, and then you could maybe take a guy like Marion Hampton, or, you can even take a guy in the second or third. Ohio State has, Quinshon Jenkins or another guy as well. So
Henderson,
Henderson. So I think that, to me, it makes sense for them to do it. Jordan Mason's no longer there. You do need a quality back behind Christian McCaffrey, and you can honestly play them in a committee role, which is probably going to be better anyway, because when you limit McCaffrey's snaps, not to the point where he's not effective and, having an impact on the game, but if you limit his snaps, it's going to increase the likelihood that he stays healthy. So, in my opinion, that's what they should do. I'm not sure if first-round pick is where I'd go with that, but I think there are enough quality backs in the second round or third round, like day 2, to say, hey, this makes a lot of sense for San Francisco, especially because, Christian McCaffrey, probably not the long-term answer in San Francisco anyway.
Yeah, you're right. The thing is, though, even when you have a dominant back, you can still get contributions from a backup. You know that as well as I do, because Justice Hill, even though he only had 228 rushing yards last year, he had 383 receiving yards. So when you add that together, that's 600 yards from scrimmage. That it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're talking about the ball domination of Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, that extra contribution from that backup running back can really be, especially the way it comes with Justin Hill, because it's juicy. it's juice. It's like he's like an Energizer bunny when you bring him into the game. So I'd like to see some of these teams use their running back room to start mixing and matching and having it look like some of these wide receiver rooms. And I think this is a really, really, really good draft to do it. And one of those teams that's probably going to benefit from that is Denver. Denver is they were a playoff team. They're picking in the latter half of the draft, surprisingly for a lot of people this year because they had so much success last year. Now, Sean Payton in the past has said it's going to be running by committee. We ain't running back by committee. We ain't going to just have one running back. But that doesn't mean that you don't pick one early. And the reason why I say that is because if it's actually running back by committee, which even the Jets are saying that they're going to do that now, you can still pick one early, but that just means you're going to have him for a longer period of time. If you get him in the first round, you get the fifth-year option. You get at least 5 years with a very, very productive player. Listen to the guys from Locked On Broncos talk about their needs and why running back is one of them.
I'm a big fan of going running back here in round one. And, you know, I used to be of that line of thinking, right? I used to be the line of thinking 2 or 3 years ago. It's like running back in round one. What? I mean, you could get a veteran for a, more cost-effective approach there that might be a little more proven. Today, I don't think it really matters anymore about that, because as we see, like with veteran tailbacks, sometimes that production dips off a little.
Yeah, it does dip off a little bit as they get older. The thing is though, everybody's not going to end up like Todd Gurley. Everybody's not going to end up banged up. Some people might end up like Alvin Kamara, bro, where you'll have him around there for like 8-9 years, and it still looks like. As a matter of fact, Alvin Kamara might be the poster child for how you use a very dynamic player who can score touchdowns and get chunk yards, but you still make sure you have somebody else because it prolongs their career.
You talk about a guy like Jamal Williams over there in New Orleans. Ross Jackson can tell you a lot about that over at Locked On Saints, where, you still had the quality of Alvin Kamara out there on the field, but Jamal Williams becomes the NFL touchdown leader because you're able to work both guys off of each other. And, Kamara's had his fair share of injury issues as well. And the Saints have still stuck by him. They've given him big contracts. And, when he is healthy, he's one of the best in the game. But you do have to supplement, hey, it's almost like expected missed games where you have to bring in another guy to say, all right, we know we're probably going to get 13 games, 12 games minimum out of Kamara on a good season. So those other 4 or 5 games, you got to figure out, all right, who's going to be the running back, and working them in while Kamara is healthy also gives them opportunities to rest him, keep him healthy for the playoffs, this, that, and the other. So it's kind of the age we're going in the NFL, and I'm glad the running back position is seemingly getting more value back. I don't think it should have been devalued in the first place, but you have examples all across the league of these great running backs and how they impact teams, impact offenses, and, just not getting the respect they deserve.
Yep. And here's one thing I got as we move to segment 3. If you don't take them early, that means good football players go to teams that are picking late in these rounds. Teams that are picking late don't have a whole bunch of holes, man. Teams that are picking late, they just want to do, if you can tell me I can give this guy 15 touches and he allows us to set the temperature of the game, and he'll probably get 1,200 yards, and he'll be good enough that he keeps you honest at home, and it has a profound effect on our team, well, that means that's a recipe for success. And that's why I think it's a mistake when teams let good football players, regardless of position, fall to good teams. And one of those teams I think is just sneaking under the radar is the Chargers. We're going to have a little discussion about them and Kevin's Baltimore Ravens here in the third and final segment of Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, you can join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, and you'll get $250 in bonus bets if you win. I love how FanDuel makes it betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, from 3-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. It's all about the NBA on FanDuel. All right, man, we've been talking a lot about running backs. We've been talking about teams that can get better because other teams let good football players fall to them, and that leads us to the Chargers. I want to talk about the Chargers. A lot of people saw what they did last year. They added Joe Alt, who people believe was a generational tackle, played him at right tackle last year. They propelled themselves into the playoffs. They hit a home run with Lad McConkey early in the second round on another pick. I think Jim Harbaugh knows what he's doing. And according to the guys on Locked On Chargers, there's a guy named Kenneth Grant that he might be interested in. Listen to what Damian Parsons says about Kenneth Grant.
Outside of Kenneth Grant, I think you can look at Derrick Harmon from Oregon, 6'4", 313. Long arms, 34 3/8. He's an 83 3/4 wingspan. He ran like sub 5 in the 40. So he's got a good get off. He's physical. At Oregon, he did a little bit of everything. He one gapped, he two gapped, he stopped the run, but also flashed the ability to collapse the pocket. So I think he could be there at 22. One of my favorite guys in this class. He's a little like he plays around that 295, 300 pound range. But Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, one of the most disruptive guys in this class, and Ole Miss didn't really do him a lot of justice because they're playing him out of position, playing him at 0 and 1 while they have JJ Pegues, who's 330 and he's playing defensive end. It was a very weird alignment that they were running over there, but it's a slanting defense, and they just told him to blow up the center every single chance he had to. Like he anchored well against double teams, but when you left him one-on-one and seen him at the Senior Bowl, this guy has the upside to be one of the more dangerous 3-techs. And he said at the Senior Bowl, I'm not a 0-1. I'm a 3-tech to 4-eye, and you allow him to play just that soul gap responsibility where he can just fully develop his full skill set. I think this is a guy that could absolutely be a full impact, because at the end of the day, we watched what Philadelphia did to the guy in your division, Pat Mahomes. They got to him with 4. They didn't have the pressure. They got to him with 4. What was a big component of that is having a guy like Jalen Carter.
You see, you get one-track mind on Kenneth Grant, like a lot of people are, and he might be gone way earlier than you think. And then Jim Harbaugh sits there and he waits for Walter Nolan. So Walter Nolan was the dude that I had Baltimore kind of hoping for and wishing for. The guys with the Chargers, they're running their operation very much like the Baltimore Ravens. So as we get into this segment, the reason why I did that is because I really wanted to find out, what are y'all going to do, man? Because I think whatever they do and y'all do is going to be kind of the same thing, since, well, there are people in both buildings that come from the same pedigree.
Yep. It's how it goes. And, I feel like for the Chargers, they do need a lot of things. I think you can't move laterally here when you're the Chargers. I know there's a lot of disappointment within the fan base about how they've handled some of their offseason. I think the draft is going to be a big way of how they handle that, especially because they do have Joe Ortiz, obviously, who was a longtime member of the Ravens organization, is their general manager. And obviously, the Harbaugh connection. Yes, that is a thing too. But hey, if you're talking about Walter Nolan of the Ravens, I'm not going to stop you.
I know you are.
Somebody I'm in on that. So him, talk about the D-line class, which is actually a pretty decent need for the Ravens anyway. But this whole class in general, I mean, it is unreal how many quality players there are. Could even be starting with Mason Graham with your Jaguars, Wig. That could be the pick.
Yeah, so, I'm a little torn on that right now, man. I'm trying to work my way through it, but I'm a little torn on that right this minute, man. But with these good teams, and the Chargers fall into that category, no matter how much we want to look past it and think that they're the same old Chargers, I don't believe that's what it is. Now, they look to be a little boring on offense, right? But that's something that people said about Baltimore forever, even with Lamar Jackson, with all of that excitement. But there's something to be said about teams like this that just sit where they are and they're patient. And all of a sudden, when they make a pick, you go, damn, they got him too. I think now that the Chargers, now we got to remember, they picked what, 3rd last year? And now they're in the 20s. That's a lot of success, man. And they mirror Baltimore. We'll see how much Seattle does too, because there's a whole bunch of Ravens out there too, from what I understand. But for me, I love those teams that can just sit and wait. Last year, the Jaguars picked 20th. It was 17th. They moved back. They picked 20th. They ended up with Brian Thomas Jr. The Eagles, they ended up with Quinyon Mitchell because they just sat and waited, and Cooper DeJean. So my thing is these teams, especially in the AFC, that are just sitting there, waiting. It could be a running back. It could be a defensive tackle. Those are two of the thickest, heaviest positions. Of course, everyone's talking about the Chargers needing a tight end. I don't think that's a problem in Baltimore. But with those two teams, where's Baltimore picking? Now, I know the Chargers are like 23 or something.
Yeah,
Where's
Chargers are 20. They're 22, right in that 22, 23, and then Ravens are 27.
27. If it was today, what position do you think the Ravens? Everybody keeps saying wide receiver, but they do that every year. Everybody says wide receiver every year. What position do you think the Ravens are going to go? I think it's either going to be defensive line or defensive back.
Yep, that's pretty spot on. And you know what the Ravens do, and you talk about teams that can sit and wait, they approach their early part of free agency, and it depends on the year with how many free agents they have to retain or are going to lose, but they work to make sure that they can wait and that they don't have a glaring need by the time that they hit the draft. Doesn't always work out that way, but this year in particular, they didn't really lose a lot of guys, at least not guys that you're really losing sleep over. I mean, you have a guy to replace Patrick McCaffrey. You have a guy to replace Brandon Stevens. You know, you're going to miss something with them, but it's not this devastating loss. Now I think that you can sit at 27. I mean, it's the same thing with like Kyle Hamilton. The Ravens waited for Kyle Hamilton to fall right in their laps. They didn't need a safety that year. They already had two starting safeties. But the Ravens said, this is too good of a talent to pass up. We're going to take him now and figure it out. We're going to take him now and figure the rest out later. That essentially is what they said. So on the offensive side of the ball, they didn't really have a lot of like pure needs. I mean, they could take a wide receiver, but they already have Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. They signed DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think that's really a good, unless there's a guy that falls to you, then I don't really think they're going to do that. But I think on the edge, defensive line, whether it be an interior guy or a guy that rushes the passer, that's probably where they're going to go. Defensive back as well with corner and safety. Those are probably the four that you can sit and say, hey, any one of those positions falls to you and it's a best player available, a guy that should have gone in the early to late teens and he's there for you at 27, the Ravens will probably take that guy. So is that a Nicky Manwari? Is it a Malachi Starks? Is it I don't know. You have so many defensive linemen in this guys, Derrick Harmon or Walter Nolan, one of those two guys. Or do they take a swing on James Pierce, for example, if he has position, if they feel like the character concerns check out? Like those are all options for them. And the reason they're all options is because we're not sitting here in Baltimore saying, man, they have nobody at X position or nobody Y position. They can afford to take somebody at any position they want to and still have it be. Even they could take an inside linebacker or Roquan Smith still there, and they could say, okay, that makes sense. Like they have a bunch of options they can end up working with.
So let me put you on the spot. You got to tell me in 15 seconds. Easy Ruaku, I think that's how you say his name. The kid from Boston College is on the board. Malachi Starks, where you going?
Oh man, I have to redeem myself after getting fired from the Browns and Titans and all those GM jobs a couple weeks ago. Man, I'm gonna say Malachi Starks. I like Malachi Starks a lot. The reason I'm gonna say it is because the Ravens, Kyle Hamilton is awesome, but they need somebody who can be like a center fielder type for them. I think Malachi Starks, he's awesome in run defense. Obviously, he has the ball skills. The Ravens had to work out a necessity last season where they got such bad play from Marcus Williams and Eddie Jackson. They had nobody else. It was a Hail Mary essentially to move Kyle Hamilton from his position of he roams all around. He's that Swiss Army knife. They had to put him deep for the remainder of the year. He's at his best when he can roam around the field, do whatever he wants to do, play up at the line, play second level, play deep. He couldn't do that at the end of last season. Malachi Starks, and assuming they re-signed Darius Washington, that would give them the ability to put Kyle Hamilton back in the position to be most successful. So that's where I'd go.
That's what I would have done too, man. I was just checking, making sure that that you were calibrated properly here on Locked On NFL. I'm gonna tell you, man, all of these prospects, you can find out more about them as you get closer and closer to the draft, and it seems like it's gonna be here tomorrow. Make sure you tap into Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parsons and my man, Coach Keith Sanchez. Because you want to talk about a breakdown of prospects, they'll talk about dudes you ain't even never heard of. And the Ravens are known for those 4th and 5th round picks back in Ozzy's days, man. They would move down to get right smack in the middle of that draft and draft a whole bunch of guys that they're still winning with right now. So make sure you find out who those players are on Locked On NFL Draft, wherever you get your podcast. Okay, we're going to get to it, man. I'll see you this time next week as things start to get started around the league. You take care. We want to thank you for spending your 29 minutes and 35 seconds with us. Thank you very much here on Locked On NFL. We'll see you next time.